WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. March Madness here, and no one loves it more than this guy, which is why I love having Dave Preston from WTOP Radio on. And, of course, you can follow all of his March Madness coverage as he rolls his sleeves up as much as anyone on my timeline as we get ready for this thing. Dave, I can hold my UMBC hat up here, and I can hold my Coppin hat up. Coppin did not come close, but we are the flagship for Coppin, and we love them. Bring back the power, Juan, and UMBC, which came very, very close in Vermont now, has moved all the way up to the 13 line. But this is about Maryland for us. I know you're down in D.C., and you got Virginia Tech, and plenty of Dookie around there and whatnot for your audience. But Maryland, at the centerpiece of all of this will be a tournament judged on how they do. And I know with the tournament coming to your homeland next weekend, the notion of Duke, Virginia Tech, Maryland, and Michigan State showing up is a little delicious, isn't it?
Oh, it is, and it kind of erases the stain of last week's dog. Their horrible loss to Nebraska. I think we talked last week, and I think I made mention that, all right, I thought the Illinois game was their dog of the winter, and then no, the Penn State road game was their dog of the winter. And now the game against Nebraska, a team that suited up, I think, 7 players, 6 of which were on scholarship, and the other who happened to have the name of Johnny Trueblood, and I think is solving mysteries right now on the Cartoon Network.
Are you saying they had enough dogs to have a whole kennel? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, gosh, yeah, that was just such a tough loss for this team. And I think if people are of a certain mind of Mark Turgeon and the program that he's built and constructed since coming on board in 2011, that was Exhibit A of just a lot of people's feelings. And unfortunately, or fortunately for Maryland, they've got a chance to redeem themselves this week. And I think they've got a good chance to win 1, if not 2 games and get to Washington. A lot of people I know are very hot on the Belmont Bruins. Their coach has been there forever. He's in his 33rd year there. And if it's not Belmont, Fran Dunphy in Temple, he is retiring after this year. And everyone remembers the Owls when John Chaney roamed the sidelines there. But these schools can be beaten.
By the way, I went to a Temple game once. Gary Williams played up there. The whatever it's called. I went to wrestling matches there once too. But the time I was there, I used to brag that I met Bill Cosby there once. But I don't do that anymore.
I don't do that anymore either. Bob Saget is now the Temple alum who's the leader in the clubhouse. Also, my cousin Liz, who's doing really well. Living up there. But yeah, exactly. The Bruins are 0-7 all time in NCAA tournament play. Fran Dunphy as head coach at Temple is 2-5. So whoever emerges from this first 4 game, they'll have less than 2 days to prepare for Maryland, and they'll have to fly. This is one of the things I'm not a fan about in the NCAAs. I'm okay with the first 4. I've gotten used to it. But I hate the fact that these schools have to go from Dayton. They have to go from wherever their school is to Dayton, and then they have to turn around and go from Dayton to the next site, whether it's San Jose, whether it's Jacksonville. So you're talking less than 2 days for a school to prepare physically and mentally for what is then a first-round game. And I think these schools are a ridiculous disadvantage. Although when you think about it, every year, a team that has participated in the first 4 as an at-large team that's been one of the last ones into the tournament, they've won at least 1 game, and a couple have made it to the regional round. Syracuse last year, VCU the very first year in 2011. So there are possibilities. I don't think that's the matchup, though, that gets a team into the Sweet 16. I think Maryland holds serve, and then you've got LSU, which is an absolute mess. Will Wade, possibly, he is under subpoena. He may very well have coached his last game with the Tigers. Yale's a team with a lot of firepower. LSU's a team that's just kind of a mess right now. I wouldn't be surprised to see Maryland play Yale and wind up beating Yale to get to Washington, D.C. in weekend number 2.
Well, yeah, the Yale thing is still sitting out there as well, that maybe it wouldn't be LSU this week. And all things considered, David, and I know, we'll talk Virginia and Duke with you and Gonzaga and their problems and other sleeper teams out there, and Virginia Tech having an opportunity to win through the weekend and play in D.C. as well. But a favorable situation for Maryland, considering how awful they've looked. And if you would have gone into the crystal ball the morning of the Illinois loss, the evening after the Penn State loss, even last Thursday, and said, well, this is what their path is going to be. They're going to get on a plane and go to Jacksonville, not, Boise or East Bemidji somewhere, and they're going to, play a team that already has to play this week, and then they're going to have either team turmoil or some 14 seed out of the Ivy League with an opportunity to go home and play and have Michigan State and Duke have all of the exorcists in the same closet at the same time. This is a nice little time for Turgeon and for Bruno Fernando and for Cowan to show their best face over the next couple of hours of basketball, right?
Yeah, and I think the key is Bruno Fernando's got to come. He has to return to the Bruno Fernando that made first team All Big Ten and not the guy who shot 1 for 4 last week against Nebraska and was a non-factor for most of the game. Anthony Cowan's got to return to the form of the guy who had 8 assists on the road against Iowa as opposed to the guy who has shot horribly to start some games. I think he missed 10 of his first 11 shots against Michigan. He wound up scoring 10 or 12 points, but they were the weakest 10 to 12 points that anyone has ever had. Those guys, how those two players fare, the rest of the team will rise and fall with them. Those are the guys who this team's hitched their wagon to, and if Bruno doesn't show, I think Bruno will have a good game, especially in that first round game, because I don't see there won't be a size disadvantage whatsoever, and he should be able to take advantage of that. I think Cowan needs to really he's had a consistently uneven winter. I think if we get the good Anthony and the good Bruno, this team is a Sweet 16 squad with a chance to play well against Michigan State. Even though they got blown out in East Lansing, they played well in stretches against the Spartans.
Dave Preston, he is Dav Presto, and you can find him anywhere basketball is being played, even True TV. He even knows where that is. In March Madness at WTOP.
Hey, can you believe they're preempting, Impractical Jokers this Thursday and Friday? What is going on?
I was going to say to Luke, is this like a channel that like Adrian Barbeau is like the star of, or like, what, is it another Jamie Lee Curtis? Isn't that True TV? It's like sort of old movies and crime movies and stuff like that,
I don't think so. It's a show that I used to have this show called Hairjacked, which never saw an episode, but it sounds awesome. It's like, say a friend would say, hey, I want, Dave to get a new hairstyle, and then they'd kidnap me, and they do like a new hairstyle for
Sounds
me.
lovely.
So
Sounds lovely.
Yeah, just Hairjacked, hijacked. It's no longer on, but it sounds pretty hilarious.
Well, you know what would happen in our place? Guys would get drunk and dudes would like paint their fingernails and give them a new, draw a lipstick mustache on or whatnot. So yeah, I am familiar with various. Maybe the president would call it locker room games or locker room talk.
Never had the mustache, but I did have a roommate did paint my fingernails, and I had to meet a professor the next day, and it was just, and I had no way of getting. It was one of the. It was. Let's just say I didn't get an A in that class.
Unacceptable in New Hampshire in the 1980s. Yeah. Dave Preston is here. He is Dad Presto out on Twitter and WTOP. For the Terps prospects, that will play itself out. We're going to talk ourselves sick through it. I hope that we're still here this time next week, talking about Michigan State or Duke or what will become of Washington and how much it'll cost to get into the games. But there's all these other brackets, all these other stories out there. I know you are truly the hoopologist and the guy that's always following the brackets and the bubble. A couple of teams here that you like their pathway. Give me a couple of sleepers on the Dav Presto brackets.
Okay, I like St. John's. Shamari Pons, heck of a guard. They have a very talented starting 5. They're the team that I think that plays in one of those first 4 games who gets that bounce. They'll play Buffalo in the first round, and they have a chance to take on Texas Tech and Northern Kentucky. The Red Raiders have had some issues as of late. They wound up getting bounced in the first round of the Big 12 tournament. I think St. John's is a sleeper to keep your eye on. I also think that Cincinnati is a team. They're a 7 seed in the South. They happen to play their first weekend in Columbus, Ohio. From what I've been told, Columbus, Ohio is in the same state as the city of Cincinnati, where the University of Cincinnati happens to be. I would not sell Villanova short. Jay Wright was able to pull the Wildcats together for 3 strong efforts. They won the Big East tournament. I'm not thinking they advance from that bracket. I have Virginia advancing to the Final Four, but I think Villanova can beat a Purdue team that, even though they've made 4 regionals in the 10 years that Matt Painter has taken them to the tournament, I think that Purdue, once they get into the tournament, is very ordinary. They wound up losing in the Big Ten quarterfinals last week to Minnesota, and they're a team that can be had. Those are teams to keep your eyes on. Also think Minnesota's a team not to be trifled with. Jordan Murphy led the Big Ten in rebounding, even though if they were to advance, they would face Michigan State in that second round. I'm surprised that they're having 2 Big Ten schools play that early in the tournament, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Minnesota get to the Sweet 16 in a shocker. I think they beat Louisville. And as fate would have it, Richard Pitino happens to coach Minnesota, and he's coaching against Louisville, who happened to fire Rick Pitino a couple years ago.
There are no accidents here, right? With the end.
From what I've been told, Rick Pitino happens to be Richard Pitino's father. Complete, the selection committee either has a real nice sense of humor, or just the odds are unbelievable as far as what they're doing.
I call it the NACC, right, Dave? That's where we are with Virginia, North Carolina, Duke, slaying all of those regional demons for us, and the Jefferson Pilot, Raycom Television Network, and all that stuff. Virginia, real? I mean, are we at a point to think in Minnesota 2 of these 3 ACC teams are going to be there, 3 are going to be there? I know everyone just thinks Zion is going to will him in. I don't know that we're ready quite to do that, but it certainly does seem feasible that all 3 of these teams that showed up last week in the ACC tournament could wind up in Minnesota too.
I've got Duke making the Final Four just because they have the best player in Zion Williamson. They have arguably the best coach in Mike Krzyzewski. And even though without him, as we saw last week when the last couple of weeks, without him on the floor, they're a very ordinary team. In the quarterfinal win in the ACC tournament over Syracuse, when he was off the floor, you saw what this Blue Devils team was. They're not the best half-court offense. They can't really shoot from three-point range. He is the ultimate difference maker. I vote in the Associated Press top 25 and for Coach of the Year and all the different awards. Even though he missed 5 games down the stretch in the regular season, he is clearly the difference maker. Classic wins above replacement guy, easily the player of the year, just a freshman. And I see him being the difference maker moving forward. I see Virginia advancing to the Final Four. The difference this year, DeAndre Hunter's healthy. Last year he had that broken wrist that kept him out and really messed up with their rotation. And Virginia is one of those, it's almost like a little clock that if just one piece is gone, the whole thing is awry. I think this year Virginia is much better offensively. They've always been great defensively. This year I think they have a little bit more hitch to their giddy-up offensively. I think Michigan wins the West bracket. I've got Gonzaga bailing out early because Tyus Battle is back for the Syracuse Orange. I see the Qs getting into the Sweet 16. The last 4 years, Gonzaga has lost to an ACC team in the tournament. Last year was Florida State. The year before it was UNC, and you can continue to go back. This year, I think they lose to Syracuse in the second round. Orange have already beaten Gonzaga twice in tournament play over the years, once while Gonzaga was the much higher-seeded team. Midwest bracket, I almost want to give it to nobody because you've got UNC that has basketball ADD. There's stretches where for 5 minutes at a time, it looks like these guys have never seen a basketball before in their lives. Kentucky, I think, is a little bit on the young side. I also see them having issues with Seton Hall and their hot shooting guard, Powell.
That's the sloppiest bracket, right? The Midwest.
Yeah,
you look at those and you're like, anybody could come out of this thing, right?
I see a Kansas team that has they're a 4 and they're really not good. They have looked very ordinary this year. This is the first time since I think 2004 or 2003 that Kansas has not won the regular season title in the Big 12. But if they make the regional, they'll be in the Midwest bracket, and the Midwest regional is in Kansas City. Now, from what I've been told, Kansas City is not in the state of Kansas, but it's rather close to it.
Well, yeah, I think the arena is officially in Missouri by a mile, but
I think you can spit into Kansas.
It would not stop me from getting barbecue on both sides of the fence there,
no,
Dave. You know that.
No.
Dad Presto's the way to find Dave Preston. He is out on Twitter as well as at WTOP as we get ready to go through brackets. Everybody's trying to win $1 million or at least win the house pool with that. Let's get back to Maryland and bring this thing full circle and the opportunity for Turgeon, the opportunity for these players to get this thing to Washington, D.C. next week, which would, for the first time in a long time, create some energy and some atmosphere in and around the program that would somehow fulfill some of the promise of Mark Turgeon, right? Like the fact that this carrot has been dangled here, that it's not a visit to San Jose or something like that, that there's an experience here for everyone, if somehow, including Michigan State and Duke, which, you know, as I said, it's the whole closet full of extras all in the same place. It is a unique opportunity that the NCAA or the ACC has put together for Duke and Maryland here, hasn't it?
Well, it is, and I think but before we get into that, have you ever seen the Super Awesome Bracket Cup, Nestor?
I'd love to know about the Super. It sounds like something I had for breakfast, but tell me about it, please.
Super Awesome Bracket Cup. Before we get into talking about Maryland, every year for the last maybe 8 to 10 years, I've put the entire bracket on a styrofoam cup, and then it plays out. I've posted pictures at Dav Presto on Twitter.
Okay.
So it's definitely something to check out. And then each round I fill in with different colors. I don't often use the phrase engineering marvel, but for the Super Awesome Bracket Cup, patent pending,
How big is the cup? Is this like a 36? Is this big? How big is it?
I think it's like a 24-ounce cup or something. It's not a small coffee cup. This
is 20 ounces of Royal Farms coffee here with the Rofo Rewards.
So
It's a little bigger than this, 24. It's not a very big cup. You must write in like 6-point hand, or what are you doing?
Oh, it is. Yeah, I mean, it really does. It really does stretch your.
This must be a weird New Hampshire thing, because you and my wife are from like the same hometown, and I once caught her, and I'm not making this up. I once caught her in the upper deck at Camden Yards keeping score on her shoe. It's true. She had a pen out, and she was keeping score on her shoe.
Never done that, but yes, it is.
She's an engineer. It's weird, man.
That's a skill.
She married me. It's really weird.
But you're talking about Maryland, Nestor, and yes, this is a golden opportunity for this team, for Mark Turgeon to really put a stamp on this program, because I think you looked at the Gary Williams era, things really didn't come together until they had that great run in the 93-94 tournament where I believe they upset UMass in the second round. Got to the Sweet 16.
Dante Bright and Dana Dingle, as I remember it, and the very young and cocky John Calipari, correct?
Oh, God. Well, as opposed to the old and smug Calipari, you know. And in between, John Chaney wanted to beat him up, but that's neither here nor there. I think this is a fantastic opportunity for these kids, for this program. It's a very young team. A lot has been made this year about how they're either the fourth youngest or the fifth youngest team. Eighth toughest schedule. I think if you multiply 4 or 5 times 8, I guess you get a number or something like that. But I think this is a great opportunity for this team to really, as you mentioned, turn the area into a Maryland basketball haven again, which is what this place was really from 1994 to 2004 when they either made the Sweet 16 or they were competing for ACC championships seemingly every year. And it's been a long time since Maryland has been a fixture in the second weekend of the tournament. After 2004, I don't believe Gary got back to the second weekend of the ACC, of the NCAA tournament with Maryland. And I don't believe they competed. I don't believe they played for an ACC championship after they won it all in 2004. So it'd be nice to get that back for this program, because do we expect Maryland to win championships and make the Final Four every year? No, but get to Saturday in the Big Ten. But when
you have a veteran guard, you have a lottery pick player, you have a nice complement of freshmen, you have the Lindos and the Ayalas, you have nice pieces here that, harken back to, the Byron Mouton era and whatnot. I just want to see them survive the weekend and not
–
spit up all over themselves the way they embarrassed themselves against Nebraska, Penn State, Illinois. We've gone through the list, Seton Hall. We've gone through the list. I don't want the swan song for Bruno Fernando to be. Remember that time he lost to Belmont in the first round? Like that can't happen before dinner Thursday.
Yeah, and the thing is, Bruno, they need to get Bruno involved immediately because he took 4 shots against Nebraska. I mean, granted, they're focused defensively on containing him, but you've got to find a way to get your best player the ball to get him shots early in the game, and that just never really happened. And that's a point of frustration that game is. Granted, we're going to move on from that game, the loss to Nebraska, but if they don't post well this upcoming weekend, that Nebraska game will loom larger. If they are able to get to the second weekend, you know what? We'll still have that game in our mindset, but that game will diminish, quite a bit if they're able to come back to Washington and Capital One Arena next weekend.
Dave Preston can be found at WTOP.com with his legendary cup, and it was very different than what I've had for breakfast for sure. Yeah. You can find him at Dav Presto and his unique brand of superhuman basketball comedy all weekend long, and I can only imagine how extraordinary it's going to be next weekend down in D.C. if the right tea leaves align here during the first weekend of what is, it's always a tough run. Sounds easy. Just go win 6 basketball games. Let's see who can do it, right? Right.
Well, I mean, the thing is that they talk about how it's such a tough field. And you only have to win 6 games. You just have to beat the team in front of you. And I think that the schools that really succeed, and Krzyzewski is great at this with Duke, where he just views it. I just view it as a 4-team tournament, and we just have to win 2 games with my team, and I'm proud of my team. And he sounds like Dr. Evil. So, I mean,
you got to put a little more
coming to Washington.
You got to put a little more Chicago in there. A little more Chicago. Yeah. Hey, man, good to have you on. Rest up, towel off, get your pizza, your wings, all the things that you're going to need there. The little napkins that come. Keep your fingers clean because you're going to be tweeting and writing and all that stuff. So, hang in there, man. It's going to be a good weekend of basketball. I know how much you love it, Dave. Great having you on, man.
Hey, Nestor, before I depart, are you more of a drummy or a flat guy? And if so, what is the ratio that you work with?
I am absolutely agnostic, non-denominational. I am complete. The only thing I don't do on a wing is I don't do spice.
Okay.
I don't go above like a 2 or a 3 on the spiceometer because I like to taste the second one after I have the first one. But that being said, I mean, I'm generally lately a crispy Korean style wing.
Okay.
It's right where I want to be. It's right where I want to be, yes.
I like to have 2 things of blue cheese for my wings, and then
Always.
I'll dip one in there. I'll dunk one in there, let that kind of marinate while I eat the other wing.
Serve me no wing without celery or carrot, or we're going to have a problem. I need a little vegetable. That's my mom. That's my mom on this shoulder saying, eat your veggies, Right?
You can always do kale. No, I don't think you can do kale.
You can do kale chips. It's fine. Maybe with some salsa.
You can, something like that. Yeah. I prefer the 8-to-4 drumstick to flat ratio because I prefer drumsticks, but I don't want to be the guy who does nothing but eat all drummies. I want to save drumsticks for the other people. And with 4 flats,
it just sounds like a weird conversation I'd be having with my wife. I'm convinced it's the water you drank out of, what's the name of the river that runs through Manchester?
Merrimack River.
Merrimack River.
Not all, it's not the safest of rivers.
Isn't there a funnier name of a river up there, like an Indian name?
Oh, yes, is Piscataqua.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's the one I couldn't. Lake Winnipesaukee.
Lake Massabesic.
There's a Squamish somewhere. Isn't there Squamish?
Oh, yeah. There's always lakes. Squam Lake is way up there. Winnipesaukee is the signature lake.
Yes. All right.
I think that's where they shot What About Bob?
I'm always nice to her from New Hampshire because Beano Ranson went to Southern New Hampshire College. So they attended the same university. Isn't that cool?
That is awesome. I actually covered them when they were New Hampshire College way back when, and Stan Spiro, formerly everybody's favorite history teacher at Manchester Central, was their head coach. He used to, the Greek immigrant, had this thick accent, and he would always talk about teaching about the Civil War, and he's like, look at the map, they're fighting down the hill. So,
Did he teach Steve Balboni or Mike Flanagan, or did he not? No.
No, you know what? Mike Flanagan went to Memorial. I actually was in the hospital years ago, and Mike Flanagan's mom was my nurse, I believe, or something along those lines. There was an admitting person. I forget where Balboni went. I think he may have gone to Memorial or
I just
Central.
know whenever I'm in Manchester, there's a picture of Steve Balboni or Mike Flanagan on the wall. That's the way it works at the back room. Dave, take care of yourself. Man, back room, now you got me thinking about tenders. See, you've screwed the whole wing thing up at the back. You don't have to worry about that at the back room. You just got to worry about whether it's coconut or not. That's all you got to worry about.
Yeah, hey, and boneless wings are not boneless wings, Nestor. They're chicken tenders.
They are tenders, not fingers, just tenders. Appreciate you. As always, there he goes. He'll keep his fingers out of the bowl, and if you bring the kale chips, he won't eat them. He is Dave Preston, Dave Presto, out on Twitter as well as at WTOP in Washington, D.C., where hopefully the Terps will get back to D.C. Maryland, we're all behind you. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. And find us in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear. The kids call it podcasting. We call it the buyatoyota.com audio vault. The morning newspaper ships digitally to your email inbox. You can read my dear Joe Flacco, and the headline is, "I'll never let him forget how elite you were here in Baltimore," and I won't, Joe. So you can go read that out at WNST.net. Our morning newspaper ships courtesy of Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. It is always $5 down, $10 a month, as well as our friends at the Maryland Jockey Club. They are racing this weekend down there, getting ready for the Preakness. We're going to be talking Preakness around here as we get ready for Triple Crown. God, we're a week away on opening day. We got March Madness. Hockey playoffs around the corner. We've got NFL draft. I'm at the owners' meetings in Phoenix this week. It's a big week around here. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.